Hi, Mike, and thank you so much, and hello, everybody. But I just, as an aside, your dad was a real pioneer in this area, and thank you for continuing on in the good work that he did. He was a joy to work with, but he was a pioneer.
Thank you.
So thanks, and thanks for allowing me to be part of this event today. From the indigenous people who are the first stewards of the land, to our farmers who've been the backbone of our state for generations, to our outdoor recreation economy and public lands for protecting Wisconsin's vast and valuable natural resources, are at the core to what we are as Wisconsinites, and obviously will be critical to future environmental and economic health in the state. Last month, I announced my 21-23 budget proposal, and I'm proud of the key investments my administration is making to continue to combat climate change, preventing flooding, ensuring fruitful land and fresh air and clean water for generations to come. No matter if you live in the central sands or the driftless regions of our state or our urban centers, turning on your tap water should never be a gamble. That's why in 2019, I declared it the year of clean drinking water. And we got to work to address some of those major water challenges we face as a state. My 21-23 budget again builds on that work and the work of the Task Force on Climate Change and State Action Plan on PFAS, specifically by creating partnerships between state and the folks on the ground and in our communities doing the work, whether that's the UW, our farmers, our local municipalities, and our counties. One of the ways we're doing this is by investing in a new grant program that prioritizes farmer-led innovation. As I said before, our farmers have been the backbone of our state and know the true value of our land and water, and many of them are ready to lead and make the changes needed to address local water issues, preventing contamination, and transitioning to more sustainable farming practices. So our budget helps them do just that. It also invests more than $23 million in PFAS remediation, testing, monitoring, and prevention, and another $40 million for the replacement of lead service lines. So because whether it's tackling nitrates, PFAS, or lead, every Wisconsinite should be able to trust their drinking water when they turn on the tap. In addition to our investments in clean drinking water, we know that our state is experiencing more damaging and severe weather events that lead to tragic and costly flooding for our businesses, our homeowners, and our communities. That's why we are investing in programs that will help restore our vital wetlands that act as a sponge and filter to help prevent catastrophic flooding. In addition to helping us prevent damage and build more resilient roads, infrastructure, and communities. And we're going to help our shoreline communities by creating the Great Lakes Erosion Control Revolving Loan Program. That's a mouthful. This will help support shoreline communities across our state that are experiencing record or near record lake levels and dangerous shore erosion. This is all to say that our budget gets to work addressing some of the major water challenges we face as a state, but we can't do it alone. Tackling these issues is going to take strategic, united efforts to connect the dots across our state agencies, local communities, and local partners like Wisconsin Lakes and our UW system, which is leading the way in growing the next generation of leaders, innovators, and scientists to tackle these challenges. Wisconsinites know we have to take on the big fights together, and this one is no different. So I want to thank you for your efforts to deliver on our promise to future generations, to leave them with a better life and a better world than the one we inherited. And with that, I want to introduce our next speaker, Dr. Jennifer Hawkswell. Jennifer is the Assistant Director for Research and Student Engagement at the University of Wisconsin Sea Grant and Water Resources Institute. And before joining the university, Jennifer spent over 10 years in water research at the our great Wisconsin Department of Natural Resources, and thank you, Jennifer, for that work, and was the state's Fisheries and Aquatic Sciences Research Chief. I will now hand it over to Dr. Hawkswell. Thank you so much, folks. Good work.
Thank you so much, Governor Evers. Thanks for being here today, and also for all of your work to help take care of Wisconsin's waters and also the communities that rely on them. And thanks so much to the meeting organizers. It really is an honor to be part of the first ever Wisconsin Water Week. So today we have a team of UW-Madison Water Science Policy Fellows and also state agency mentors who are excited to be here with you today. They're going to talk about how they're tackling Wisconsin's water challenges. And I wanted to acknowledge one of our fellows, Dr. Brian Maitland, who took the lead in coordinating this session, and he will serve as our session's MC. I don't know, Brian, if you can give a quick wave or say a quick hello.
Hello, everyone. Good to be here.
Thanks, Brian. And Brian recently finished his PhD in ecology from the University of Wyoming, and he's placed at the fisheries program in the Wisconsin Department of Natural Resources, and he's working on Wisconsin's trout fisheries. You'll hear a little bit more from Brian in a bit here. I'm the Associate Director of UW-Madison's Aquatic Sciences Center, and just a little bit of background on our program. It's home to 2 UW system programs, the University of Wisconsin Sea Grant College program, and the University of Wisconsin's Water Resources Institute. And the missions of both of these programs is really to combine and support research, outreach, and education for the protection and also the sustainable use of Wisconsin's water resources and the Great Lakes. And in 2015, we started this statewide fellowship program. It was sort of an experiment at the time. It places new scientists, and this is just people who recently graduated from either a master's program or a PhD program. And we place them with a state or federal agency. And it's very much been a team effort, both within our program and then across the various agencies that you see listed on the slide there. And I'm just joined today by an outstanding team to share information about this state fellowship program. And so the next slide. So our roadmap for the session is listed here. I'll start with a little bit of background on our fellowship program, and then you'll hear a series of short presentations by some of our fellows, and they're all highlighted here on the slide in yellow. And then you'll have an opportunity here to hear from the agency mentors, the people who support and mentor the fellows. And the mentors who are joining us today are Kate Angel from the Wisconsin Coastal Management Program. We have Adam Freihofer from the Wisconsin Department of Natural Resources, and we have Dr. Sarah Yang from the Wisconsin Department of Health Services. And then we'll have time to answer any questions that you might have. And before I move on, just a personal note about this program and these people. I've worked on Wisconsin water issues for about 20 years now, and this has been absolutely one of the most fulfilling projects of my career. These fellows are just incredible in terms of their expertise, their talent, their willingness to learn and become better scientists and communicators. And then it's just so inspiring to see what they accomplish in their fellowship year or two. And then we have the mentorship and the connections with the state agency staff that has been wonderful. That UW state agency connection has just been really great to experience. And I'll just say my experience with Wisconsin state agency employees is that we have so much amazing talent within our state agencies. And so the next slide. All right, I just wish to start out with what motivated us to launch the state fellowship program. And our organization's core mission at UW is to help take care of Wisconsin's waters and the people that rely on these resources. And then within our organization, we also have, all of us have personal stories and personal convictions that, kind of drew us toward this mission. And I thought I would share mine. I just start out with this. And I encourage you to think about what it is about Wisconsin waters that motivated you to join us today. What are your motivations and stories? And ultimately, we all share in this connection with Wisconsin waters. So for me, gathering around water and fishing is a part of my family's heritage. This is a picture of my family. This is my children and my husband. And what I love about this photo is that it really captures for me a memory of a perfect day in my life. This was a perfect day on vacation with my family, gathered around a northern Wisconsin lake, fishing, making memories together, and feeding our family. And this memory was born from other memories. And I think my very first memory in life was based around water, and it was a memory with my dad. I must have been about 4 or 5, and I remember the first time my dad took me ice fishing. We had a huge snowstorm, and I remember deep snow, this bright sunny sky, and this little ice fishing sled that he had built to carry all of his equipment in very organized fashion, which was his style. He was a chemist, from our home to a nearby lake. And this sled had a little spot for me on it to sit and ride as he pulled. And I remember getting to the lake, and my dad drilled 2 holes in the ice and he put 2 lines in the water. And it took a while to get a bite. I remember this anticipation and pure excitement of being a little kid and the notion of actually pulling a fish from the water through the ice. We waited a while, and finally we had a bite. My dad rushed me over to that pole and he put it in my little hands, and he let me catch that first fish of my life. And what a thrill it was. It was a little bluegill. It was about 3 inches long, but I couldn't have been more proud. We fished for another hour or so, and I just kept catching fish after fish from this hole. And he told me I must be such a good fisherman because here we were together, him a seasoned veteran, and me catching all the fish. I remember feeling so proud of myself. And years later, as this memory came back to me, I reminded him of the story. I told him how much fun I had. And of course, I reminded him of who caught all the fish that day. I'll never forget this because he looked at me and he said, "Jenny, it was the same fish. I never took the first one off the hook. And when you weren't looking, I would throw it back in the water. I had so much fun that day watching you catch that same little fish over and over again." And I still think back to that moment, and I think what a gift he had given me. Out of that day, born a love for all things water, for biology, and also for a deep concern that we take care of this incredible resource, our water. And I just really encourage you all to reflect on what it is that drives you to do the water work that you do. What are your values, your legacies, your heritage, your subsistence needs, or your livelihood, your spirituality around water? I encourage you to think about and draw strength from what it is that motivates you. And I think it's really important in difficult times like this past year. And thank you for attending Wisconsin Water Week and for the work that you do and the care that you give. And I wanted to thank you all for being part of a very important equation. And that's on the next slide here. There are a lot of equations in science, but I have found that this one is the most complicated one that I've ever tried to solve that involves science. It relies on care and hard work and relationships and trust. And it's this, it's how do you best combine science, basically a way to get good information, with people who care, stakeholders, with engaged citizens, with communities, with businesses, industry, resource managers, and policymakers. How do you best do that? Because if you're successful, then you have all of the ingredients for sound decisions, basically science that is actionable and science that can lead to greater positive impacts on our resources and society. I wanted to thank you all out there for joining us today and for being a part of this equation, because this is really what we need to do in order to take care of Wisconsin's waters. In Wisconsin, we're so fortunate to have 15,000 lakes, 80,000 miles of rivers and streams, and we're bordered by 2 Great Lakes and the Great Mississippi River. Plus, Wisconsin has about 1.2 billion gallons of water underground. Despite this wealth of surface and groundwater in Wisconsin, we still have so much work to do to protect water quality, water quantity, and to make science-informed management decisions about these waters. And so building bridges between researchers and the communities that rely on those waters is the goal of our fellowship program. It fits right in with our mission at the Aquatic Sciences Center, and it's truly an embodiment of the Wisconsin idea, where that knowledge that's gained through research at the state's universities is used to help the people of the state. And so the next slide. And so with that background, we created an opportunity for new scientists to work right at the intersection between water policy and stakeholders. And so basically how this works is that the university partners with a state or federal agency who identifies a water resources challenge, And we place the fellow at that agency for a year or two to work on that challenge. And really our interests at the university are, mostly a workforce development interest. We really want to help train the next generation of scientists to do actionable science, or science that has a greater impact. Fellows learn to apply their technical skills to a real world challenge. They learn how to engage stakeholders throughout a project where it becomes a lot more about relationships and conversations and listening. We encourage our fellows to sort of step outside their comfort zone in bridging science with stakeholder needs. And then the partner's interest, the agency, is, they would like to make progress on a water challenge for the people of the state, and these folks can help. It can also help attract top talent in tackling these challenges, and occasionally that can lead to longer term positions as well within the agencies. And so, and I do list here, we have a couple of open positions now. You can see we've got a fellowship position open for coastal resilience and also one on harmful algal blooms. And so then the next slide. Thanks. This slide at a glance just shows the history of our state fellowships between both programs that we manage, Sea Grant on the left and the Water Resources Institute on the right. Plus we have a cooperative training agreement with the Environmental Protection Agency that's sort of shown in the middle. We'll have initiated about 24 fellowship positions by the end of this year. And then the next slide. With that, I'll close, and I hope you enjoy hearing about a variety of ways that the UW Fellows are helping the state. And with that, I'll hand it over to our MC, Dr. Brian Maitland, to facilitate the stories from the Fellows.
Great, thanks a lot, Jen. Okay, folks, so now that we've given you a really good overview of what these fellowships are all about, we have 7 short stories for you that highlight the novel and innovative work that our fellows are currently doing. And these stories are going to take us through some of Wisconsin's most challenging water resource issues, from Great Lakes coastal management to contaminants and groundwater withdrawals. And importantly, you'll also get a sense for what motivates our fellows to do what they do and what they are and why they are so excited about doing what they're doing in Wisconsin. And so first up, I get to introduce 2 fellows working on Great Lakes coastal challenges. Adam Arend received his master's degree in environmental policy and planning from the University of Michigan. And Lydia Salas received her master's in water resource management from UW-Madison. Welcome, Adam and Lydia.
Thanks, Brian. So hi, everybody. My name is Lydia Salas, and I'm here with my colleague, Adam Arend, and we're both J. Philip Keeler Fellows with Wisconsin Sea Grant and the Wisconsin Coastal Management Programs. I'll let Adam quickly introduce himself.
Hello, I'm Adam Arend. As Brian said, I come from a recent graduate of the University of Michigan, and I've always had an interest in the intersection of policy and science, especially as it pertains to Great Lakes and its resources, having spent most of my childhood and adult life in the Great Lakes region.
Great, thanks, Adam. And as Brian said, I recently graduated with a water resources management degree from UW-Madison. And this fellowship has really given me the opportunity to pursue science communication in a way that encourages informed decision-making. So overall, the goal of this fellowship is to connect the science of coastal processes with Wisconsin's communities that could really benefit from having that information. And to accomplish this, one of the projects that we are involved in is the Coastal Processes Manual. So the Coastal Processes Manual is a technical guidance that aims to explain Great Lakes coastal processes like erosion and changing water levels, waves, currents, things in that nature, and then demonstrate methods to estimate the risk that they present to coastal properties. And so this manual is intended for technical staff at state and local governments, and also interested coastal property owners. The first edition of this manual was conceived and written by Phil Keeler, the first coastal engineer in the state of Wisconsin, in response to a lot of coastal erosion-related questions he received from concerned landowners and municipal staff during the high water levels of 1988, if any of you remember those. So we're currently working on an update of this edition of the manual, and I'll let Adam talk to you a little bit about that.
Thanks, Lydia. So right now, she mentioned 1988 high water levels, but right now we are currently in another high water level period, which I'm sure, as many of you know, can intensify erosion issues along the shoreline. So there's a growing concern about erosion and how to respond or adapt. Now, these two photos that we have on our slide, they come to us from the Wisconsin Civil Air Patrol, and the circles are showing the same spot 3 years apart. Now, this is a great visual, and it's captured how much property has been lost in the short span of 3 years. Now, this issue is not unique to this property. There are many types of these pictures all along the coast of Wisconsin. And one of the major updates of the manual that Lydia has alluded to is the inclusion of a section dedicated to resiliency. And we feel, a highlight on resiliency is needed, especially in the light of the damaging high water level concerns. Now, whereas the first few sections of the manual deal with, the basics of coastal processes, what happens on the coast, and then how to analyze the impacts to their property. There's a final section that we've included that has some resilience considerations, offering the reader a host of some sustainable, resilient measures that they can use to protect their shoreline. Now, while this manual is focused on Wisconsin's Great Lakes coastline, we believe the content will also be applicable to all Great Lakes state shorelines, and will have some information that those who live on inland lakes in Wisconsin would find useful. So while on the subject of resiliency, we wanted to touch on how this fellowship has adapted to the pandemic. So both Lydia and I both work virtually. In fact, I'm joining you today from the state of Michigan. And while in-person meetings have site visits and engagement opportunities have been put on hold, technology has allowed us to continue to meet with our mentors, stakeholders, and other professionals in virtual spaces. So the flexibility that Dr. Hawkswell and this fellowship provided has allowed us to continue our work even in the midst of a pandemic.
Great. Well, thanks, Adam and Lydia. Appreciate that. Well, next, I have the pleasure of introducing Dr. Gavin Daynert, and Dr. Daynert is placed at the Wisconsin Department of Health Services. Gavin completed his PhD a year ago from UW-Madison in zoology and has been instrumental in working on an emerging contaminant. So Gavin, can you tell us a little bit about your fellowship?
Yeah, awesome. I'm really happy to be here today. As mentioned, my name is Gavin Daynert, and I'm a postdoctoral fellow that was fortunate to be placed in the Wisconsin Department of Health Services, or DHS. And the big goal of my project was really to help protect all Wisconsinites against human health hazards that can be found, or maybe even found, in our groundwater and drinking water. And the big project that I got to work on was to help set recommended groundwater standards, in particular for cycle 11. And a lot of what this was is I got to work on both a set of pesticides and the famous emerging contaminant that is well known as PFAS, or per and polyfluoroalkyl substances. And I know that we've all learned quite a bit about PFAS probably this whole week. So I was fortunate then to kind of help work specifically on these emerging contaminant. And in this part of this position, I was able to help set recommended groundwater standards for 16 different PFAS. And these were released out in early November. And the goal of these recommended groundwater standards are to help protect public health. And I've been very grateful for this opportunity to work specifically with DHS here to kind of learn how the department is protecting the public and protecting our groundwater and drinking water. And I hope to continue to kind of work on protecting everybody from these emerging contaminants as we move forward. And so thank you.
Great. Thanks, Gavin. Appreciate it. Well, next up, I have the pleasure of introducing Dr. Sarah Bulgoyan, and she is a Keeler Fellow funded via a Sea Grant Research Award to work on PFAS in Green Bay. Sarah completed her PhD from the UW-Madison, working with Dr. Christy Rummikul, who is serving as the UW system representative on Wisconsin's PFAS Action Council. So there are really strong connections with Sarah's work and the work of state agencies. So Sarah, can you tell us a little bit about your fellowship?
Absolutely. Hey everyone, my name is Sarah Bulgoyan, and I am also working on PFAS. So while Gavin is working on setting these really important health standards for how much PFAS is acceptable, I am looking at how much PFAS we have currently in our treasured water bodies. So our main research question for this project is, how do PFAS move through Green Bay tributaries? And ultimately, how much PFAS is getting transported into the Bay of Green Bay? So we know that PFAS is harmful for both humans and wildlife. So protecting the bay, which serves as a drinking water source for many humans, and these tributaries that house fish and other aquatic species is extremely important. And one reason why PFAS transport to the bay is a concern is because of this fire products facility in Marinette, Wisconsin. This company is called Tyco International. You may have heard it referred to as Ansel, which was its name before it got bought out. And this facility manufactures firefighting foams. And these are not the same kind of firefighting foams that you might keep at your house or your landlord might be required to provide for you. But these are military grade foams, and they're used to put out petroleum-based fires. So they're used at places like airports, military bases, and petroleum storage facilities. And in Marinette, they've been used and manufactured and trained with for decades. So we know there's extensive groundwater contamination in that area. So for this project, I look at not just the Marinette area, but all of these tributaries leading to the bay, including those in the Upper Peninsula of Michigan. And I've been able to work with a bunch of different great people. I'm mainly working at UW-Madison, but also working with people at the Wisconsin DNR and with people at the Wisconsin State Lab of Hygiene. So being part of this bridge between academia and a state government agency has been really beneficial, and just keeping this open line of communication between these entities has really pushed us to accomplish some mutually beneficial work.
All right, thanks a lot, Sarah. Well, continuing on, I would like to next introduce Dr. Nate Paulish. He received his PhD in mathematics from the University of Tennessee and is now applying his mathematical and statistical expertise to questions related to fish and wildlife toxicology. Welcome, Nate.
Brian. Yeah, thanks for giving me an opportunity to come and share some of this work. So yeah, I'm Nate Paulish. I'm a postdoc, a fellow stationed at the Environmental Protection Agency. And so I'm a Wisconsin native. I grew up on Lake Michigan with my dad. And so yeah, Jennifer's story earlier really, really got me a little bit. So anyway, so my research right now, again, I'm posted at the EPA. I'm at the Great Lakes Toxicology and Ecology Division in Duluth. And my work is really focused at sort of the interface of toxicology and ecology. And so, and bringing mathematics to try to bridge the gap between sort of our laboratory derived estimates of toxicity for chemicals and what they might mean ecologically speaking in a more realistic setting. And so our laboratory studies are really focused, are standardized, and they're focused on sort of a limited number of species and sort of for fixed durations of time and constant levels of a chemical concentration in general. And of course, there's major benefits to standardized toxicity studies. However, you could imagine that it would be challenging to take information that's sort of in this constrained environment and use it to inform what's actually happening in the real world. And so that's where we're sort of trying to bring some mathematics into the equation. I didn't mean to say that. Anyway, and so the way that this sort of works is by, we're trying to connect and build effect models. So these would be models that would come from laboratory studies, and they would say, if you are a fathead minnow, what amount of a chemical might cause a certain decrease in your growth or in your survival? And this is information we can get from our laboratory studies. And then we match these with sort of exposure models. And this is information we might get from examples of Sarah's work that she just talked about, where they're measuring these contaminants in the environment. And these exposure models are seasonal and sort of pulsatile, and they could inform what would happen perhaps for an environmental application of a pesticide and the associated water body with it. So we get ideas of how much chemical is out there. And then we use that and we match this up with life history models for particular species. And so how do you describe the life of a fathead minnow mathematically? Well, there's an equation on there that you can use to do that. And so that's something that we try to do. And we really focus on bringing these together to help provide tools and techniques for ecological risk assessors to help make the best decisions they can in sort of realistic exposures that one might estimate for chemicals that are in the environment. And yeah, and that's my work, and this has been an awesome opportunity. So, thanks.
Awesome. Thanks, Nate. Well, all right. Next, we are actually going to shift gears a little bit, and we're going to move from contaminants and toxicology to groundwater resources. So to help us, I am pleased to welcome Dr. Carolyn Voter, who finished her PhD last year in civil engineering at University of Wisconsin-Madison, and she is placed in the DNR's water use program. Welcome, Carolyn.
Thanks, Brian. As Brian mentioned, I'm Carolyn Voter, did my PhD at UW-Madison, and my background is the world of water resources engineering and urban hydrology. So I think a lot about both the services our water resources provide and the challenges we face in terms of how we interact with and sustainably manage them. And these two interests of mine combine in the form of the Central Sands Lake Study, which is the project I'm working on here at the Department of Natural Resources. And in the Central Sands of Wisconsin, shallow groundwater supports a $500 million potato and vegetable industry, which relies on a lot of high-capacity wells for irrigation. And this groundwater is also essential for 800 miles of trout stream and over 300 lakes. And as you might imagine, if you don't already know, during low water periods, there's a lot of controversy over how much of that low water period, that dry stream bed, that dry lake bed, is due to low precipitation, and how much is due to the use of groundwater for irrigation in this area. And so in response to this debate, the 2017 Wisconsin State Legislature directed the DNR to study the impacts of groundwater withdrawals on 3 specific lakes in the Central Sands in Waushara County, and determine if groundwater withdrawals are causing or could have a significant impact on these lakes. I came into this study right around when field data collection was wrapping up to help with and co-lead the technical analysis, where we're working to figure out first, how do groundwater withdrawals alter lake levels? And then second, do those changes in lake hydrology have a significant impact on lake ecology in terms of water chemistry, fish, aquatic plants, and human uses? We're at a really exciting stage in this project right now where all our analysis is coming together and we're really snowballing towards our final decision, which will be publicly available this spring in just a few months, and we'll deliver it to the legislature this summer. I have loved working on this project, and I just wanted to conclude by giving a shout out to 3 reasons. So one is the science. This project is in many ways a synthesis of the state of the science in several different fields, and it's been both challenging and fun to kind of push the bounds of our knowledge in this area. Another is the insight into how the leap from scientific insight into management and policy action happens. So who are the actors, what are the concerns, and what do you need to understand about people and institutions and systems in order to have the best shot of translating your science into action? And then the last is team members, as several others have mentioned. I've learned so much from working with state survey geologists, DNR ecologists, USGS modelers, and DNR policy experts. And as I'm now searching for a permanent position, I'm looking for an environment that's as collaborative and as meaningful as this project has been for me. It's been a lot of fun. So turn it back to you, Brian. Thanks.
Great. Thanks, Carolyn. Great. Well, next up, we are going to keep on this groundwater theme, and we're actually going to shift over from lakes to stream ecosystems. And to do that, I want you to help me welcome Dr. Dana Lapidus. Dana finished her PhD from Berkeley in Earth and Planetary Science recently, and is now placed in the DNR's Water Use Program. Welcome, Dana.
Hi, as Brian said, I'm Dana Lapidus. I am here because I want to do research that makes a difference in the world. I started off my PhD at the University of California, Berkeley, thinking primarily about climate change. And during that time, I spent a lot of time volunteering on restoration agriculture farms. There are some local farms, and I went to some farms in Portugal as well. And I learned a lot about sustainable food from these experiences. All of these interactions with farms led me to want to study water resources in my PhD, where I was seeking to improve our ability to sustainably interact with the landscape around us. So here in Wisconsin, I continue to think about sustainable water use at the Department of Natural Resources. So as Carolyn described in the Central Sands, groundwater plays a really important role across the whole state in sustaining both human needs, such as for public water supply and business like agriculture, as well as ecosystem needs like stream flow and trout streams. The conditions in streams can be described pretty well by how much water is in the stream. So that's the blue graph on the slide, and what temperature it is, and that's the gray graph on the slide. In case groundwater withdrawals from high capacity wells, the timing of groundwater withdrawals often coincides with the driest time of year when water levels in streams are naturally at their lowest. I think you can imagine what happens if there's too little water in the stream, and fish aren't very happy. Stream temperatures are also really important, as if it gets too hot in the stream, fish can be stressed. This means that less water at the end of the summer can be particularly stressful, since less water means that streams will also be warmer. The Wisconsin DNR currently considers significant adverse impacts to navigable waters like streams and lakes. While there's been much study to understand the connection between groundwater withdrawals and surface water, it is challenging to efficiently assess groundwater use in a way that protects the stream ecosystems, but also provides water security for business interests like agriculture. My role is to help develop a statewide approach to assess the role of groundwater withdrawals on stream flow and ecological health. The project involves, first, identifying ecological stream flow targets for management. Second, developing an automated method to accurately estimate the impacts of groundwater withdrawals on streams. And third, implementing all of this in a decision support tool that managers can use to make decisions about balancing the needs of ecosystems and human users. I'm still at the very beginning of this work, but it's exciting to have the first preliminary results that are starting to guide a general strategy for how to approach the project. Although I haven't actually been to Wisconsin yet due to COVID-19, it's been a great experience to work directly with managers in the Wisconsin Department of Natural Resources. The science we're doing is interdisciplinary and gives me a great opportunity to learn more about ecology and groundwater hydrology in particular. Even just in the first few months of my fellowship, I made a lot of great connections throughout Wisconsin that have helped me to get started on a promising path. Moving forward in the fellowship, I am excited to invest more time in converting the science into a management tool and communicating the process and results to the general public. So this program is a really unique research experience and is helping me to understand what it means to bridge that gap between science and management.
Great, thanks, Dana. Appreciate it. Okay, folks, and finally, we have me, Brian Maitland, and I am here because I also, like all these amazing fellows you've just heard from, have a passion for freshwaters and want to do research that helps facilitate a sustainable coexistence with the natural world. So growing up in New York City, right next to the mighty Hudson River, it really gave me an appreciation for the power of flowing waters, but then also their serenity and importance to people and fish and bugs and birds alike. And it's really these interests in freshwaters and animal life that have driven me to straddle the fields of hydrology and ecology in my current research as a fellow in this program. And now, as the pictures on the screen suggest, my project is all about trout that live in streams. And stream trout depend on cold running water. Cold running water in streams is dependent on groundwater inputs and a natural hydrologic regime. And so in Wisconsin, a combination of geology, current climatic conditions, and current groundwater levels from a decade of very high precipitation interact to make Wisconsin streams very well suited for trout. And in fact, currently there's over 13,000 miles of classified trout water in the state. So right now, trout streams and populations are actually doing quite well and thriving, doing the best that they have in a century or so. But unfortunately, this Goldilocks period is really not going to last for trout. Climate warming and groundwater withdrawals for irrigation are major threats to Wisconsin trout because they can affect the amount and the temperature of water flowing through streams. Right. So on one hand, we have shifting precipitation patterns and climate change that have altering the surface water hydrology up on top. And on the other hand, we have groundwater issues. And as Carolyn and Dana have showed you, groundwater pumping can really affect things below the ground. Right. So with climate forcing change from above and groundwater pumping forcing change from below, my role has really been to come in and untangle these effects on trout populations across the state so that we can leverage that information to use it and hopefully manage them better in the future. And as Dana said, I'm still very new to this at the beginning of this work, but preliminary results are starting to come in and we're excited to see where this work is going in the next couple months. And aside from the science, I kind of want to conclude my story with one note. on perhaps one of the most appealing aspects of this fellowship to me, and one that I think you've heard from the other fellows as well. And that's the focus on doing impactful science using a really collaborative approach. And for me, I believe that to build bridges between researchers and the communities they serve, we really must shift from siloed science that sits on academic shelves to a focus on actionable and inclusive science. And actionable science results simply when researchers work deliberately and interactively with resource managers and policymakers and businesses and industries and local communities, and importantly, diverse citizen groups. And that vision for science is really what motivates me. And it is also what motivates these fellowships, which is, I hope, what we have convinced you with our short stories here today. Now that we've given you a wonderful overview of the really cool work that the fellows are doing and why they're so excited about doing it, we want to give you a glimpse into the other side of the table. So we want to give you a glimpse from the agency's side of the table, from the mentors that are helping mentor all of us fellows. Right? Because remember, a key part of these fellowships is placement in a state agency where we can work directly with a set of mentors. And so we've asked 3 of the program's mentors to join us today: Sarah Yang, Kate Angel, and Adam Freihofer. And to give you that perspective, we have chosen to ask each mentor in turn this question. So first, let me ask Sarah Yang, how has this partnership enhanced your agency's efforts to make progress on a water-related challenge?
Yeah, and thank you again for hosting this meeting and coordinating everything. And I'm really happy to be here this week. So our role at Department of Health Services is really to provide public health recommendations and advice on a number of health-related issues. And I'm specifically the groundwater and drinking water program lead and toxicologist. And since 2018, we were asked by the Department of Natural Resources to develop recommended groundwater standards for more than 50 substances. And so this, as you can imagine, is a pretty big lift. And this was on top of other work that our program was doing on emerging contaminants and, to protect people from groundwater and drinking water contaminants regularly. So having Gavin come on board and help us develop these recommendations really helped us do this in a timely manner. And he really brought a lot of expertise and new insights into this work. On a related note, we were able to apply for a grant from the CDC to enhance our capacity to address environmental health hazards. And I would have to say that without Gavin's help on these groundwater standards and his help with the grant, that would not have been a successful project. So I'm really happy to have had his support. And it also helps us, stay connected more with some of the research that's going on at the university. I've gotten weekly updates from all the different mentors, and it's really great to see your real faces, to put a face to the name, because I've just read all your emails, but it's really cool to see all the different science and work going on around Wisconsin.
Yeah, thanks, Sarah. Appreciate that. Well, I'm going to kick it right over to Kate with the same question. Kate, how has this partnership enhanced your agency's efforts to make progress on a water-related challenge?
Thank you, Brian, and thank you everyone for organizing and being part of this. It really is great to get a chance to celebrate such a great, wonderful program. So I am with the Wisconsin Coastal Management Program. We are a fairly small office in the Department of Administration, and our program is dedicated to preserving, enhancing, and making accessible our coastal resources in Wisconsin. Coastal hazards have been a focus of our program since before our program was even approved in 1978. And hazards in this case would be erosion and flooding and coastal storms and associated damages from that. But over the last few years, with the higher lake levels, those issues have become increasingly important and have accelerated. You saw some pictures from Lydia and Adam's slide of a house that's about to fall in the lake. That is not all that unusual. There are several houses in that region that are pretty close or already have fallen in the lake. And of course, homeowners and communities have faced a lot of damages with storms and associated infrastructure damage with that. It has led to people being increasingly aware of the issues and looking for solutions to that. So Adam and Lydia mentioned the Coastal Processes Manual. This is a very heavy lift. It's taken several years to try to pull together something, building on the excellent work that Phil Keeler did That was last updated in 1998. And really just, the expertise they've brought and their ability to go out and to work with scientists and other experts in these fields, both with the first draft of writing and reviewing and editing and getting technical reviewers. It really is leading to what I think is going to be an incredible product. I have heard from people in the region as well as on the national level who are very excited about this updated manual and really waiting with bated breath to get that out. There's no way we would have been able to tackle that without the fellows. Beyond that, I think they're really, the amount of collaboration that they help to facilitate between Sea Grant. Our office has always had a great relationship with Sea Grant. We have people on each other's boards. I work with Sea Grant staff all the time, but it really, really helps to have someone who has a presence in each office to be able to keep their ear to the ground and look for ways that we can leverage just even in just outreach blasts and things like that. That has been so helpful. It's definitely helped us to promote our program too through the outreach that they do with the participation in meetings and conferences that Sea Grant helps to put together, host, and identify for them. And also having a fellow has really increased our capacity in many ways. There's that sort of technical assistance that they can provide. We don't have, for example, an engineer on staff, but through the fellowship program, we've had 2 engineers who have had a presence in our office, which has been incredibly helpful. But also the increased project management capacity. Adam Arend has put together some story maps to help show what we've done in our program in the last few years and really how we can help and things like that. But also in developing new and innovative ways of dealing with some of these issues. Adam Beckley was our first fellow. He applied for a NOAA resilience grant, which led to a lot of resources being brought to our southeastern Wisconsin communities, and has this very successful multi-year, multi-agency partnership that's been ongoing. And Lydia just put together a grant application for a project of special merit that will help to coordinate some of the resilience efforts going on in our Green Bay and Lake Michigan shoreline. And that is something that, quite frankly, we don't have the staff time to put something together like that or to implement it. And knowing that we have a fellow who can help with that and really take that on it expands all of our reach. So I do want to say, call back to what Jen said earlier about this being a great example of the Wisconsin idea. And I think having these just terrifically talented new graduates coming out and bringing their passion and helping our state government to better serve the Wisconsin citizens, I've really, really been happy to be part of that effort. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Kate. Appreciate all that. Really appreciate it. Well, last up, Adam, same question to you from the DNR side. How has this partnership enhanced your agency's effort to make progress on a water-related challenge?
Sure, thanks. So I'm Adam Pfeiffer. I'm the chief of the DNR's water use section. Our program implements regulation and management associated with water quantity. That includes all aspects of the Great Lakes Compact, as well as high capacity wells and emerging issues such as groundwater flooding, which we spoke about, the DNR spoke about earlier this week in the conference. Managing groundwater withdrawals with respect to Wisconsin's water resources has been a political and legal roller coaster if you've been following it over the past decade. And the DNR is focused on improving the science used to answer these groundwater management questions that we've been tasked with from both the courts and the legislature. And so with that said, I would say the additions of Carolyn Voter and Dana Lapidus to the water use section and to Brian Maitland to the DNR's fisheries program has been an absolute game changer for us. With tight timelines on legislatively required projects like the Central Sands Lake study and a desire to enhance our evaluation of stream impacts from groundwater withdrawals for high capacity well applications, the fellows have brought new perspective, new scientific methods. I think it's safe to say we couldn't have accomplished what we've accomplished thus far without them. So extremely important. I would also say, highlighting some of the things we've heard over the course of the last hour, that what this fellowship program does is also improves a very, very important relationship, and that's one between the state government and the UW system. It's an additional link and partnership. So while we're working closely with these fellows, they're also bringing the resources from the UW system, collaboration with other professors and different tools to the trade to help us answer these questions. So again, bridging that, keeping that relationship strong is a critical piece of Wisconsin and the Wisconsin idea. I also think it's been extremely valuable for the citizens of Wisconsin. These fellows are improving the science that supports everyday decision making at DNR and the other agencies. So we're able to get a better answer, one that accounts for uncertainty, one that accounts for the timeliness that's needed to make the decision. So, and I close the loop with what Jen highlighted in the beginning of today's panel session, which is this program has been extremely important, not only to the people of Wisconsin, but also to the protection of the water resources that we're tasked to protect. So I would say this has been a great experience for the department and for our program specifically. So thank you.
Great. Well, thanks so much, Adam and Kate and Sarah, for your responses and your perspectives. And thanks to you all for listening here today. That's the UW Water Resources Science Policy Fellowship Program, everyone. A place where the university comes together with state agencies to tackle these pressing water challenges in Wisconsin while simultaneously training the next generations of scientists to do some of this actionable science. And I may be a little bit biased, but I have to say it's a pretty cool and meaningful program if I've ever seen one. So it's pretty neat to be a part of it. And with that, we'd love to hear from the rest of you in the session. So we'd love to open up to you, the audience, to hear any questions that you may have. And if not, feel free to shoot Jen or myself an email and we can point you in the right direction for any questions you might have. But on behalf of myself and Jen and all the mentors and mentees here today, and fellows, thank you very much for attending.
Thank you.
And I'll pass it back to Eric there. Yep.
This is Eric joining back in. I'm just going to talk like a ghost in the background here. We do have some questions over in the chat. I'm going to try and frame them so that anybody can kind of join in and grab the questions. Some of these are kind of challenging. Some of them might relate specifically to different agencies. One of the challenges we have is that in Wisconsin, we're an agricultural state. Agriculture is a big part of our economic mix. It's a big land use. And then over time, we've seen agricultural production being concentrated more and more onto CAFO type operations, and they have a waste issue. And someone just wants to know, are there strategies out there or cutting edge ways that we can manage CAFO waste so that it doesn't threaten groundwater quality and threaten drinking water around the state? Sort of what's on the cutting edge in CAFO waste management, and do we see maybe this would lead into a future iteration of a fellowship that focuses on this type of issue?
Why don't I'll start. I love the fellowship idea, Eric. I mean that there's no sort of limit to the types of interesting, difficult questions that fellows can help tackle. And this is one of these wicked water challenges or questions. This is a tough issue, given just the importance of agriculture in our state. I'm going to kind of address this question from more of a programmatic standpoint, and then if others want to chime in, feel free. One thing that I think is also really valuable in this state that people might not be aware of is that Wisconsin's one of the few places that has something called a Groundwater Coordinating Council. It's been around since the late 80s. And it's in statute. And so the groundwater law sort of forces, sort of like this fellowship experience, it creates a situation where all of the state agencies that have any work at all related to groundwater come together quarterly. They do an annual report to the legislature. So if you Google Wisconsin Groundwater Coordinating Council, you can see the latest annual report to the legislature, which will have a piece on groundwater quality. But the really nice other part to that is that it also provides some funding for research in the state. We have, in the last go around, we had about close to, think it's about $500,000 dedicated toward groundwater research for the state. That groundwater research funding has been critical, sort of bedrock for the state in understanding threats and concerns related to our groundwater quality, also any concerns related to groundwater quantity, and then also bridging that gap between those two things and how we manage our state's groundwaters. So really active participants in this group include the UW system, through our Water Resources Institute, which I'm a part of, the Department of Ag, Trade and Consumer Protection, Department of Natural Resources, Department of Health, Department of Transportation, and the Department of Public Health and Safety as well. So there's just a really great coordinating group there to sort of provide this sort of baseline. And Carolyn Voter was a previous fellow who helped serve the Groundwater Coordinating Council. Carolyn, I don't know if you have anything to add on this, or Adam at the DNR, if you have anything specifically on the CAFO piece.
Yeah, I think I just echo, Jen, what you said, that I think it's a great challenge for a new fellow to tackle. And I'd also say that from my perspective as a fellow, when I was working on the Groundwater Coordinating Council's annual report to the legislature, that was just a wonderful learning experience for me in terms of the story of groundwater and groundwater research, and kind of how contaminants have emerged and how researchers have recognized them and addressed them over time. There's just some really fascinating stories about that related to these issues. So yeah, I'll echo that as a great resource.
Yeah, I would say the same from the department standpoint. There is a lot going on right now in tackling this question, looking at decision support tools and things, and working with the agricultural community to get there. But this is certainly a great question for a fellow, and it's certainly a tool that the department should consider using in the future to tackle some specifics in terms of where we head with it. So things are being worked on this topic. Research is being done, but we certainly have a long way to go.
And I'd say one way that people can get more active in this is both through their local land and water conservation office at the county scale. They do a lot of the boots on the ground work, working with farmers and even working with the big operations. And if you know that it's a licensed CAFO, there are contacts within the Department of Natural Resources that you can reach out to and communicate issues that you're seeing around water protection. So definitely, it's a place where citizen action can play a role as well. Some other comments about the whole program, and the top two questions here are kind of related. One is that a lot of this is focused, what we've been talking about is about water programs. Is there a parallel program in areas like wildlife and agriculture? And then kind of a related question, how are the projects selected? What's the process that you use to get this mix of projects?
Yeah, so far the process has been, I reach out to state agency contacts every year and say, we have a little bit of base fellowship funding. Does anyone have an interest? And I have connections with the water programs in several state agencies. So I try to reach out to all of those water programs. And, like anything, it takes a while to kind of get the ball rolling. We started out pretty small with a graduate student who happened to be Carolyn Voter, stationed at the DNR at just a graduate student role 5-6 years ago now. She did such a great job. Word spread, and a couple other people at DNR were like, hey, we would like a fellow like that. And we kind of changed the model a little bit where it was a graduate. And now we've just had these amazing connections with the, like I said, the Department of Administration, Kate Angel at the Coastal Management Program, but more recently, the Department of Health Services has seen the value in these fellowships. A lot of those connections have been through this Groundwater Coordinating Council, like I mentioned. I think we have so much opportunity and room for a partnership with the Department of Ag as well. And so the only limitations really are on funding. I mean, this takes some funding to pay these fellows to come and spend a year or two working on Wisconsin issues. We've done a really good job of leveraging federal funding to our programs with the state funding from the state agencies. So that's an important piece. Other than that, it's really, who has the mentorship capability and the need, because I think this model works really well and it's very transferable.
That's great. We got one last question, I think, that I can ask, and then we're going to let people go to grab their lunches and keep people sort of on their flexible time. I would also point out, for most of you, I think, that are on this panel and presenting right now, you can get back into the event platform you can go in there and see there are some more detailed questions. I'd invite anybody to go in there and then use the chat after this to kind of pick up a question from the Q&A and then type in a response, because we're not going to be able to get to all the questions over there. Does this program have sort of long-term legs? Is there permanent funding under this, and kind of what's going on right now about funding for these types of partnerships?
Yeah, we hope it has long-term legs, but it's all contingent on funding. As I said earlier, the good news is our base funding to our Sea Grant program and our Water Resources Institute, those are both parts, they're federal state partnerships, they're parts of national networks. Both of these programs are over 50 years old, sort of serving the people of the state, but there are similar programs in other states. So there's this really, strong base with partnership with the federal government on these. So, I really hope that doesn't go away. Actually, that program was threatened the last few years in the administration's proposed budget, but it has bipartisan support in Congress. And so in both cases, both of those programs, just even in the last few years that have been kind of difficult, at least from the administrative side, have seen amazing support from Congress and have stayed funded through those budgets. I think all states and all state agencies are going to really, this COVID has changed so much about our lives over the last year. And I think the budget implications of COVID are still things that everybody has to sort out and kind of figure out over the next few years. And hopefully we get through that and things are back to normal and pretty stable. But even in this COVID difficult year, we've been able to grow this fellowship program. So I just hope it keeps kind of moving in that direction. As I said at the beginning, I've just been so inspired. You see these people here and what they've been able to do, the talent that we've been able to attract to the state, and then the mentorship that these folks get from the state agencies. It's just, as Brian said, it's sort of a win-win-win. So as much as we can do to keep it going, growing, and transfer it to other disciplines. If anyone has any questions or interest in applying this in a slightly different way than maybe we are, or has an interest in participating, please don't hesitate to reach out to me.
That sounds great. Thanks. So it sounds like, unlike a lot of our water issues, this is one where maybe it would help for you to reach out to your federal level representatives. So these would be your Congress people, this would be your US senators, just letting them know that this is the kind of thing that you like to see as far as higher education and research institutions collaborating with state government in order to foster new innovations and to solve problems that people are facing really right now in Wisconsin. So that would be sort of the advice coming out, it seems like. I want to thank all of the panelists and all the people here today. I want to thank Mike Engelson, my co-conspirator. I want to thank Governor Evers for coming in and just saying hello to everybody. Really, this has been another great plenary session for Wisconsin Water Week. I do want to just let people know we do take a bit of a lunch break. I think the afternoon programming starts picking up right around 12:45. So please take care of whatever needs you need to do. I'll invite again the panelists to come check out the chat. There's some other great things. Another reason for all the panelists to go look at the chat is that that's where you get the audience feedback. I shared some of them actually with I think one of the Adams in this group. And if you go over there, you'll see some really glowing comments and remarks. So please go check out the event platform and look at the comments that people left behind. So thank you very much for your time.
Thank you all.
Thanks, Eric.
Thanks, everyone.